Welcome to College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T.
One question looms over the entire season. Who's in? The answer this year is pretty evident. 3 teams have set themselves apart. Their records perfect. But the order? Well, that's where the drama lies. Ohio State and LSU each have held the #1 spot, and both staked a claim on Championship Saturday. The Buckeyes with a rally, the Bayou Bengals with ruthlessness. But being #1 matters, because #2 has to play #3. And #3 almost certainly is going to be Clemson. And playing Clemson seems like a really bad idea right now. I mean, who's staying in step with those guys? And all of this might work together and play right into #4's hands, likely to be Oklahoma. Overlooked, dismissed, and 3 weeks to seethe about it and prove they belong. Who's in? We think we know. We'll find out the order and who faces off coming up in minutes.
15 weeks ago, what did you most wonder? What did they all want? What did we all seek? To matter today. To be the answer to the question, the proof to the doubt, the fact to the theory. To be named, elected, chosen. After the upsets and comebacks, the last-minute wins and the late-season losses. Through the challenges and tests, among the successes and surprises, the last bracket, and the first 4.
Absolute dominant performance.
Time to wonder is over. Time to win is now.
The committee room in Grapevine, Texas. 6 sitting ADs, 3 former head coaches, a Hall of Fame player, president of the university, Hall of Fame journalist, and the chief of staff of the United States Army, all answering to Rob Mullins, chair of the selection committee. They'll have the answers coming. At Clemson, this has become a tradition. Pizza party for the Tigers, who are headed back to the playoff once again after another undefeated season. They've won 28 in a row. And the Buckeyes, with their 3rd straight Big Ten championship, finally is going to result with a trip to the college football playoff, a place they haven't been since 2016. We have it all covered for you. Reporters everywhere. Gene Wojciechowski's at Oklahoma with the Sooners. Tom Rinaldi in Columbus with the Buckeyes. Marty Smith in Baton Rouge with Coach O and the Bayou Bengals, and Maria Taylor in Clemson, probably enjoying some of that pizza as they get ready. We'll hear from all of them, hear from the coaches, and of course, we won't see the rankings until you do. Comes your way in about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit less. Reese Davis, Jesse Palmer, David Pollack, Joey Galloway, and Kirk Herbstreit. I think we know who the 4 are, Kirk. Who should be #1?
Well, we have 3 teams that are right there that you can make a case for. Clemson's been a dominant football team. Don't quite have the resume of the others because of who they've had to play. Ohio State and LSU, it's a coin flip. Ohio State's been the most consistent team. I think the closing argument for the committee will be interesting because of what LSU did in Atlanta and the way Joe Burrow and that offense played. Their defense is improving. Wouldn't surprise me to see LSU get the nod at 1.
You know what, and you talk about splitting hairs, and this season we're trying to split a hair 3 different ways. We do really truly have 3 teams that all of them can make a case for being #1. But if the committee has moved Ohio State to #1 2 weeks ago after beating Penn State, and then they add a Michigan team that is a top 15 team, then they add a top 10 Wisconsin team, I can't imagine them not remaining at #1 when the rankings come out in a few minutes.
Are you telling me that's what it should be?
I'm telling you that, Reese, because I'm splitting that hair 3 ways,
okay.
I'm good with any way they
Joey,
slice
Joey,
it.
Joey,
That's
no,
fair.
Joey also has 3 numbers.
I like that.
My poll,
I like that answer.
Yeah.
I have
I got
3 #1.
My poll had a 3-way tie at #1.
There's
Very,
3-1.
very Canadian, by the
Split
way.
that hair, Paul.
I'll actually take a stand on who I think it is. Listen, you can do that, but there's only 2 teams with a resume that's been challenged all year long, and that's LSU and Ohio State. And to me, the whole season, if I'm going to take the whole body of work I think Ohio State's defense has been consistent. They've showed up. They've showed out every single week. I think the resumes are pretty close. I think strength of record's pretty close. Game control's pretty close. So I will take what I saw throughout a whole season, and I would put Ohio State at number one. Listen, it's no slight, but I would put Ohio State at number one.
I think Ohio State will be number one. I would put LSU number one. I think it comes down to quality wins. They've got 4 against teams currently in the top 12 right now. Their win at Bama, snapping their 31-game home win streak with Tua, to me, is the best one anybody has had this year. Defense has struggled over 13 games. They are peaking and playing their best football on that side of the ball the last 2 weeks. This is the best offense we've seen, guys, in SEC history. Joe Burrow is going to win the Heisman Trophy. They have matchup problems everywhere. They just outscore everybody. So it is splitting hairs. Personally, I would put LSU 1 and Ohio State 2.
So would I, and the win at Alabama is a defining thing. I think the one thing that I can guarantee through all of this, I'm not sure that we're going to see anything at number 1 or at number 4 is going to make my friend Kurt get up and walk off the set and surprise.
No.
This man's surprised.
2 years ago.
You're anchored in right here now.
And he might be too tired to get up and walk off. It's been a long,
the voice is weak over there.
Long couple days.
Yeah, I saw the Pac-12, the SEC, and the Big Ten all in person.
Hot tea with some lemon. We got some hot tea and lemon over here.
I'll tell you.
Over here, far left.
My man's showing some staying power right here, too. See it all right here. Doing Sports Center late last night, too. The reveal is coming up. You'll see just the top 4 teams then. Rest of the top 25 is going to be unveiled somewhere around 3 o'clock Eastern time. Let's get you out across the country. All of the teams that we think we're going to see. You've seen the 4 reporters. Let's now join Gene Wojciechowski in Norman, where the Sooners are trying to. Your Big 12 is the only Power 5 team, Gino, that are only Power 5 conference that has yet to win a game in the college football playoff.
Well, Reese, on October 26th, when Oklahoma went to Kansas State and suffered that devastating upset loss, it seemed like Oklahoma's playoff chances were on life support. They definitely needed some sort of football miracle. So I asked Coach Lincoln Riley how he convinced his team that it still had a chance.
We've lived this story before. And we know the quality of league we play in. We knew the quality of team that we had in that locker room, and knew that if we could improve on the things that we need to improve on, coaches, players, everybody, and go on a run, that we could give ourselves that opportunity. And our focus at that point was just, look, if we don't win, we're not going to have a chance anyway. So let's just focus on each week getting better, find a way to win each and every week, and then try to put yourself in position to win the Big 12 championship. And proud of our guys for being able to do that.
Well, how is Oklahoma celebrating that likely 4th playoff appearance in the last 5 years? It's 3rd in a row? Well, it's not. This place is a ghost town. The players are off today except for those coming in for treatment, and Coach Lincoln Riley embarked on an almost week-long recruiting trip. But let's go to a place where there is a party, Clemson and Maria Taylor.
Well, you're right, Gino. There's certainly a lot going on here at the Clemson football practice facility, as family has already started to gather for that annual pizza party. Now, the Roy bus, it did roll in a little late last night, around 3:45, as the Clemson team returned from their victory in the ACC championship, and that meant a little bit of a later start for the team. 11:45, the meeting started right upstairs where the team will be watching Selection Sunday, and then afterwards, Dabo Swinney, he will address his team. Obviously, they'll roll out the almost 300 pizza slices that they've had brought in just for this party. And again, we will see Clemson dancing in the playoff and enjoying yet another run to a potential national championship. Now we go to LSU with Marty Smith.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning. I flew back to Baton Rouge last evening after the LSU Tigers won the Southeastern Conference Championship, and to a man, regarding the college football playoff, the mantra exactly the same: anyone, anytime, anywhere. And Joe Burrow said as much to me at the 50-yard line last night, still holding the MVP trophy from that Southeastern Conference Championship game. He said, doesn't matter who we play. Send us to Canada. Tee it up in a gravel lot. We're ready. Doesn't matter who it is. And I will tell you this. I asked All-American safety Grant Delpit after the game, why are you the #1 team in the country? He said, Joe Burrow. He's the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. We'll see very soon who Burrow and the Tigers will face in the college football playoff. Now let's head up to Columbus, Ohio, and Tom Rinaldi, who's with the Buckeyes. Tom?
Well, Marty, head coach Ryan Day couldn't have been any more clear. I think we deserve to be #1. Those words he uttered immediately after raising the Big Ten title championship trophy in Indianapolis. The team then made its way back, didn't return here to campus until after 3:30 in the morning, and now have gathered back here starting at about half an hour ago, a full team watch party to see who they will be revealed to be. They believe to a man that they should be number one. If there's not recency bias at play, but the full body of work. Either way, every player here excited for the rankings race ultimately to be revealed.
And Tom, that is coming up in just about 5 minutes. Now, we're taking Clemson out of this because Clemson, in terms of strength of schedule, they're 40-plus spots behind these two. They don't have the number of ranked wins. It has nothing to do with the football judgment. You can easily make the case that Clemson is the best team based on just watching the tape. But it's almost certainly going to come down to these two. You mentioned the game control, the strength of record. LSU has moved to number one in both of those things. How much do those metrics weigh in your favor in terms of making a final decision?
Well, I think to me, it's weighing the eye test first when you're clumping these teams together and who you believe are the most dominant, most talented teams. And from there, I think you go to resume. Personally, why I think Ohio State is going to be number one is what they did in the second half in the Big Ten title game, blanking out Wisconsin 27-0. I think that was a bit of a stamp and a final argument to the committee that we are the most dominant team, having beaten a team that was previously ranked number 8.
I want to take the other side of that coin then, if you're going to say that. I want to say, well, if I'm an LSU fan, I just curb stomped the number 4 team in the country. I didn't need to wait to the second half. I took care of business. So, listen, some people love stats. I can't stand stats. I hate stats. But if you're watching games, you can tell that both these teams, they're very comparable.
Yeah,
they're great, great football teams. So you can say what you want, and you can make a case, and I can go, Joey, that's a great case. Yeah. That's a great case, and I can agree with you. So there is, unfortunately, one of them has to play Clemson.
Yeah,
that's the problem. Right.
And I don't usually look at metrics until we start talking about the committee. And so if the metrics have been in LSU's favor as far as strength of record, strength of schedule, now they have game control in their favor, and the committee still felt that Ohio State was number one, even though those were always in LSU's favor, then I can't imagine what would have changed for this Ohio State team as far as who's this number one team in the entire country. Now, both teams can make an argument for it, and that's why I'm trying to split that down the middle and keep 3 teams there.
I say you're trying to split it in the middle and then split it again.
I don't think we can do that.
It's been a long time since we've seen anything like LSU's offense, and it just continues to stick in your mind what Joe Burrow has been able to do with the weapons around him. But I wonder if the committee take into consideration, they had Ohio State 1 coming into this weekend. Think about Ohio State's last 3 weeks, the wear and tear emotionally, playing Penn State in a game that got competitive in the second half, taking on the rival against Michigan on the road, then going into the Big Ten championship, hearing all week, oh, doesn't even matter what happens, digging themselves a hole 21-7, and then scoring 27 unanswered points. You wonder how much they would take that part, not just look at the metrics and the numbers, but the emotions and the wear and tear. It's pretty impressive to do that 3 straight weeks.
You know, we talked about that on SportsCenter last night. I've had this thing when we started devising, or not me, but when we started talking to the math guys and stat guys about devising FPI, I think that's a real thing. 3 straight weeks, emotional games, really hard to be ready for the third one. I don't dock Ohio State one iota about having a little sluggish first half in that one. We'll see how it goes. Everybody wants to be number one because you want to find a way, if you can, to avoid Clemson. Once we get the rankings, we'll show you the top 4. That comes first. That makes somebody named Zach in graphics the most powerful man in college football in a few minutes.
You know, LSU's been an unbelievable team. You know, I would imagine they'd be one.
These are top 15 teams, top 10 teams that we played 3 weeks in a row. And I don't think if there's anything else that shows what this team's made of, you saw it here today.
It don't matter to us. Wherever they tell us to play, whoever they tell us to play, we're going to get it.
College Football Playoff Selection Show is presented by AT&T. You're watching College Football Playoff Selection Show, presented by AT&T.
LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma. Who's in?
Taking a look at the trophy they're playing for. That is the College Football Playoff National Championship Trophy presented by Dr. Pepper. The National Championship game in New Orleans. Remember when we show you these rankings, wherever they wind up for the semifinals, the number one team will not be placed at a geographical disadvantage. That is the number one criteria. Here is the criteria used to rank and select the teams. Conference championships won, strength of schedule, head-to-head. Now, this is when teams are close at the margins, when they get together in the so-called clusters, how you separate them. If a team is deemed to be unequivocally better, then it can override.
I'm glad you said that, because I think sometimes people look at that first line and they think you have to win a conference championship in order to qualify. This is more, as you say, Reese, when it's a cluster and a close call, a way for the committee to separate one team from another.
You've been watching college football. You've seen that.
Well, you've had certainly some, we're not going to have it this year, but we've had some situations in the past. 2017, when Alabama got in, did not win a conference championship. Ohio State didn't play for a conference championship, got in 2016. But this time, it seems a near lock. Where the top four teams are going to all be conference champions. I am told that we have the top four in. We have not seen a reminder that the entire rankings will be ready about 3 o'clock Eastern time, but we have the top four. So let's count it down right now. Zach in graphics is ready, and here we go. Let's start with number 4.
We know this one.
This is going to be Oklahoma, right?
We know this one.
Homer.
At number 4,
all right, there we go.
Oklahoma. Jalen Hurts transfers to Oklahoma. Senior quarterback, 4 years in the playoffs.
Down 25 in Waco. Come back to win that game. Go on, continue to win football games, win the Big 12, and here they are.
This series of fortunate events that have happened for them in the last couple of weeks, right? The Big 12 market correction, Baylor going from 14 to 7, Minnesota, Alabama. Oregon losing was the big one. Because if Oregon beats Arizona State, they're number 5 heading into the Pac-12 title game, and they dominate Utah, they're getting in.
And then Utah losing didn't hurt, because then it sort of eliminated and made.
And then Georgia losing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to keep going on, it's more about
they needed all of it.
Everything kind of just played its way for Oklahoma to fall into that.
It's a quick question here, Joey, as before we count down and go on to number 3. Everybody thinks this is such an easy game for number 1, that this is a de facto bye and the other one's going to be a war. Oklahoma, can they compete? Big 12 has never won a college football playoff game.
All Jalen Hurts does is win. And so if you have Jalen Hurts at your quarterback position, CeeDee Lamb back, healthy, they can beat anybody because they can score points. Now, the defense has been up and down all season long. They've looked pretty good the last couple weeks, but Oklahoma will not be an easy out.
Imagine sitting here, you're a player, and all you're hearing about is Clemson, LSU, Ohio State. Who's going to luck out and be number 1 and miss Clemson? You're an OU player and coach. That's going to fire them up.
And how about this? 3rd straight year for the Sooners in the college football playoff. 4 years out of 5. You get another chance. Another quarterback. But first it was Baker for a couple times, then Kyler Murray, and now Jalen Hurts getting his shot. Let's look at number 3. We assume this is going to be the Clemson Tigers, the reigning national champions, and it is. Dabo Swinney's team won 28 consecutive games. They have won 2 of the last 3 national championships.
It's going to be interesting. And Kirk, you talk about motivation as they're eating their pizza down at Clemson. And we've seen Dabo these past couple weeks motivating his team. Talk about the disrespect that they've received. Now they're sitting in number 3, and they know they're going to get their shot at either Ohio State or LSU first. And this is this bunch here, they can't wait to get back on the field because of the things that Dabo's talked about and how they've been disrespected along this process.
They can't wait to get back to their pizza. They were hey, okay.
Here's the difference with this year versus the other years in the college football playoff. This is the first year people fear number 3. I think for years it's been 1 and 2, and then everybody else. Remember last year? Notre Dame was number 3. They were unbeaten, but no one thought they had a shot against Clemson. They lost that game 30-3. This year, this is the team you want to avoid, and that's why it comes down to who's 1 and who's 2.
You want me to give you a little something on Clemson? First, Clemson ties Alabama with its 5th playoff appearance. That's the most. You know, Dabo and our buddy Tim Bray, they're always looking for first for Clemson. 3 seed and a 1 seed, for that matter. Never won the college football playoff.
Well, there you go.
Clemson could do another first.
I just would say this about Clemson. I think they could be better than they were a year ago when they won it all. And they're different in the way they attack. They're better at quarterback, better at running back, better at receiver. They're not as good on the defensive line. They're better, I think, collectively because of all that they're doing on defense with their back 7, with the linebackers, safeties. So they're sitting there with a major chip on their shoulder, feeling disrespected and excited about their matchup.
And peaking at the right time.
No doubt.
You know, they took a lot of criticism after that 1-point escape from UNC, and Trevor Lawrence was throwing picks. But the way they've played now the last 6 games, they look like a national champion.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, here comes the drama.
Here we go.
Who is at number 2 and will face Clemson in a semifinal on December 28th? At number 2, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State slips from number 1 the last time Ohio State was in the college football playoff. They got a load of Clemson, 31-0. In fact, the Big Ten hasn't scored a point in the college football playoff since Ohio State won the national championship in 2014.
And I will say, much like Clemson in their close game against North Carolina, they were a different team after that. After last night's game and the Big Ten championship game was the first time Ohio State has had to face some adversity. And to come out in the second half and do what they did, they will be a much better football team now that they've faced it, came back from it, and proved that they deserve to be in this playoff. I can't wait to see this Buckeye team now having gone through something and come back to the field. They will be better than they were all season long.
What I love about this matchup and build-up is what Reese just touched on. The last time they met out in Phoenix, it was a blowout. It could have been a lot worse with Deshaun Watson. That's a motivating factor for Ohio State. And in that locker room, where you just saw a shot of Ryan Day, they're going to feel slighted because they're not sitting there at number 1. So I think both Clemson and Ohio State have something to prove when they meet up with each other in that
Basically,
Fiesta Bowl.
everybody's slighted except for LSU. Everybody feels like they are going to have great motivation.
You know, and Kirk slipped it in, and because you don't put number 1 at a geographical disadvantage in any way, that is, we'll get that officially in a minute. But Ohio State Clemson, that is going to be the Fiesta Bowl. And LSU, the Bayou Bengals, making it into the playoff for the first time. They are number 1. We'll go to Atlanta, championship game in New Orleans. Last 3 times we've had a national championship game in New Orleans. LSU has been there. LSU and Oklahoma have some postseason history. And now Jalen Hurts against LSU again. I got a note on that for you. Go first.
Well, you can get your note.
Just
close your eyes and think about LSU and now where they're at. And just look, the offense and the way that whole team has changed. They've been crazy fans for a long time. Like, LSU fans are nuts. We go there every single year. Now they're losing their mind because they got a legitimate chance to win a national title. It's been fun to watch them grow throughout the season. And I don't think anybody up here is going to say there's a defense in there that can even stop them consistently.
I love their attitude. From Coach Ogeron down through the entire team, their attitude has been, let's just get in. We don't care who we play.
You're right.
The other teams have been talking about being number 1. LSU is coming at that thing like, give us anybody. We're ready to go play. I've become an LSU fan of what Ed Ogeron has done there and their attitude this entire time.
And what's strange is that's new for LSU.
Absolutely.
Because they've been a defense, ball control, field position team. They now are playing with a totally different set of toys with Joe Burrow, these receivers, the back, and an attitude led by Coach O, where they want to step on your throat every single play, every single quarter that they played this year.
And now they know they can do it. For a while, they believed they could do it. And they went into the Alabama game. It's like, hey, let's go. We got it this year. Now these guys, you can watch them and see.
Burrow represents that, really. Their leader is like.
It's funny. Like I'm thinking about how the committee made this decision to flip-flop Ohio State and LSU again, and we talked about splitting hairs and the resumes and eye tests of both LSU and Ohio State very, very close. Appears to me that the committee has looked at LSU, the team peaking at the right time, maybe playing the best football now, getting in over the team that, David, you mentioned earlier, had been more complete throughout the course of an entire season in 13 games. We talked about this is an LSU defense that gave up 38 points against Vandy, 614 yards against Ole Miss. You would think that would go into the evaluation, but I guess having watched them play extremely well against Texas A&M, and then a Georgia offense that was injured and had suspensions, they still gave them a lot of credit for beating what was a top 4 team in the SEC title game, and they've decided that that's now the 4th time we've had a flip at number 1. Started with Ohio State, went LSU, back to Ohio State, now LSU.
And Reese, and you've mentioned this to us numerous times. It also depends on who's in the room and who has to step out of the room.
Right.
And so when you move teams around, like when you all of a sudden you move a Utah out of it and you put an Oklahoma back in it, and when you start juggling these teams, because of the connections, it also depends on who has to step out when they start voting on this, because the numbers, metric-wise, have been in favor of LSU for the past 3 weeks, even though they jumped Ohio State ahead of them. Then all of a sudden, when the new grouping of teams comes in, the room votes again and they move LSU. Now, I don't have a problem with it. although I am surprised simply because they did move Ohio State ahead of LSU when the numbers were in LSU's favor.
You probably look at this now. You have a 13-person committee. 2 had to recuse themselves when Oklahoma was in the group of teams being discussed, Frank Beamer and Joe Castiglione, who's the athletic director at Oklahoma. So you had 11 deciding that. But that's probably not different from the other weeks leading up to it because they had to recuse themselves from that. If you look at that LSU-Oklahoma matchup, I want you to think about this for just a second. Jalen Hurts, the Oklahoma quarterback, has played on 3 teams that have faced LSU, 3-0 against him. And in each of those games, 11 points would have won the game. In 2 of those games, a safety would have won the game. This is going to be a different
not
deal.
Gonna happen this time.
This will be a different deal.
The offense on the other team is
it's a little different this time around. Okay, so we've got the matchups, Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, LSU and Oklahoma. It'll be the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, Ohio State and Clemson. Those on December 28th. Let's bring in our buddy Chris Fowler now. Chris, you look at this, and Ohio State and LSU swapped during the course of the regular season, the number 1 spot. Did you agree with the result of LSU having done enough to move ahead of Ohio State?
I did, Reese, by a narrow margin. The rationale has been well explained by you guys. I don't think it's anything Ohio State did or didn't do yesterday. Their win against Wisconsin, one going away by 8 or 10 lengths after trailing at the half-mile pole, was very impressive. But LSU beat the team the committee thought was 4th. Now, you can say Georgia was overrated, but who else was going to be 4th? And that was a virtual road game for LSU. I was in there yesterday. It was filled with Georgia fans, and from the beginning, LSU handled the pressure of a postseason game for the first time. Those guys on that roster had not been through it. They go basically on the road in a game they're told they don't even have to win to get in the playoff, and they were dominant from the start. On defense, they were flying around. I think they answered some questions on that side of the ball. They left points on the field, a lot of them, and still hammered Georgia. So that's what I think the committee was keeping in mind. That's why they got number 1, not because of anything Ohio State didn't do.
Ohio State, Clemson in the other semifinal. One thing I think that's a factor we haven't touched on yet, Chris, is that is going to be such a huge clash we anticipate, and LSU is perceived, right or wrong, at least at the moment, to have this huge advantage. But the long break between the semifinals and the national championship game, which won't be played until January 13th, is going to mitigate a little bit of that for the winners, will it not?
I think so. We've seen this unfold in the playoff era. You talk about the conference championship games versus the regular season. The intensity is ratcheted up. In the semifinal, it goes up another level. And the championship game, another level, just like playoffs in any professional sport. All the players and coaches who've been involved have talked about that. Clemson's roster has playoff experience and winning playoff experience. Ohio State really doesn't have it. Maybe a couple of the veterans were around there when they lost the last time. I think that matters a lot. I think the geographic component to this is important. If you look back at this sport, 12 of the last 13 champions have been from the South. Ohio State being the one exception in year 1 of the playoff, and it's been since year 1 that any team outside of the South has even won a playoff game. We've talked about Oklahoma losing and Michigan State and Washington and Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting to see if Ohio State could sort of end that run. But I think it's a very compelling game, a much better matchup than the last time they played when it was a whitewash for the Tigers.
It has been a while. We mentioned that the Big 12 is the only Power 5 conference without a college football playoff win. Oregon had one in the first year, and the Pac-12 misses the playoff once again. And, these are pretty compelling semifinals we have set up.
They are. I just want one last thing on LSU. We keep talking about this year, and LSU is kind of everything has come together. How lucky are they or fortunate are they in 2019 to play in their backyard in potentially both games? Atlanta will be a big home field advantage for LSU, and if they win that game, whoever wins, Clemson and Ohio State, going basically into their backyard in New Orleans.
Yep.
So for LSU fans, they're going to Atlanta and potentially New Orleans.
Here's the thing for Clemson. Everybody's
you can go to Santa Clara. They're going to New Orleans.
Everybody for Clemson, we've heard it all year, and it's made Dabo angry that we've trashed their schedule. They haven't played anybody. You beat Ohio State, and then you beat LSU. You're the national champs.
I know.
You've earned it. And they've earned the right to be in the playoff.
Oh, yeah.
And now they get an opportunity with a great matchup. That semifinal feels like a national championship.
Well, that's what everybody's going to say.
Except
leading up
LSU.
to it. And by the way, you know what? Nobody's trashing Clemson, and nobody's saying they didn't try to schedule. The ACC was down.
Here.
It's just the
Not
way it
Clemson's
goes.
fault.
Bear, you didn't really. Chris Phillipians is with us. So Bear, you didn't really expect this move, at least going into the weekend, necessarily for Ohio State to slip out of that one spot. What did you think after you saw the games yesterday?
I expected it after yesterday. Going in, like we had talked about yesterday, I had thought a couple of weeks ago the committee had made up their mind in the change, but I think what we wound up seeing was the LSU defense in the last couple of weeks get healthy, put together a couple of great games against A&M, and then yesterday against Georgia, and they answered any questions about the committee might have had about the LSU's defense. I think you look at the wins that LSU had against Florida, Auburn, at Alabama, away from home against Georgia in what was a road game, and they probably just said, hey, that stacked up better with the wins that Ohio State had. I had no problem with it. I thought they made the right move.
Yeah, so did I. And again, I would not have pounded the desk or gotten up and walked off the set if Ohio State had been number one. That would have been deserving as well, but it seems that they rewarded the two best wins of the season, in my judgment at least, LSU winning at Alabama and then yesterday against Georgia. Here are the storylines. Ed O said he wanted to make a change on offense, and he lived up to it. Went and found Joe Brady, and he energized. He completely overhauled the LSU offense. Joe Burrow last year looked like a tough, good, solid quarterback. Now he's had the greatest statistical season in the history of the Southeastern Conference. Think about that a little bit. They got that gorilla off their back. The Alabama losing streak, 8 straight times they lost. The starting of the losing streak happened in the national championship game in New Orleans against Alabama, and now maybe it comes full circle if LSU could get back to New Orleans and perhaps capture the national crown again. Pleased to be joined on the phone by the head coach of the LSU Tigers, Ed Orgeron. Ed, congratulations, first of all. How badly did you want to be the number 1 seed in this college football playoff?
You know, it didn't matter to us. Anytime, anywhere, anybody, we're ready to play. So, you know, we're going to be playing Oklahoma, a great football team. Wherever they tell us to play, we're going to show up, and we're going to be ready.
Well, they're going to tell you to show up in Atlanta, and you'll get to go back there. Now that you have this 3-week break, how much planning have you done in terms of how you'll handle the time leading up and trying to get your team to peak at the right moment in the playoff game?
Yeah, first of all, I had my first home visit this morning recruiting. I had 2 other home visits today. I'll be in about 18 homes this week, so we're going to recruit a great class for this great university. We'll give the players a week off, and we'll start preparation next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and we'll let them go home for Christmas and come back and practice a couple of days here and head over to wherever bowl they tell us to go.
Now, you're in the middle of this, Ed, and you and I spent some time together this summer, and you were locked in. You talked about how Brady and Burrow both could be game changers. At what point have you at least even taken a second to step back and appreciate the transformation, the change, and the accomplishment thus far for your program?
You know, obviously, the season just ended. Our goal was to go to the SEC championship and win it. That was one of our goals. We're going to be on the road recruiting. I'm sure I'm going to think about it this week, but we're not done yet. That wasn't our final destination. I'm very proud of our offense. I'm very proud of our defense and all our coaches, but we still have some work to do.
Now, Lincoln Riley is a noted offensive guru himself. Your defense seems to be playing its best ball right now. What has improved about your defense over the last couple of games?
You know, first of all, we're healthy. Grant Delpit's healthy. We're getting a better pass rush. Derek Stingley's playing lights out. We're tackling better. Coach Aranda challenged our defense after the Ole Miss game, and our guys have responded. They play with a chip on their shoulder. We're playing LSU defense. I'm very proud of them.
Hey, Coach O, it's Kirk. I just wanted to ask you one thing about Joe again. You've been around a lot of great quarterbacks. You've had them on your team. You've tried to defend them. From an intangible standpoint, what has he meant to this 2019 Tigers team?
You know, his leadership, Kirk, he leads every day, man. He came in here a leader by example, very quiet. Our players believe in him. The plays that he makes on his feet, the connections that he has with his receivers, our guys believe that he can score at any time.
Hey, Ed, are there any recruits in New York City that you could visit while you're up there watching Joe Burrow collect the Heisman next week?
I'm sure if there is, I'll find him.
Hey, Ed, congratulations, my friend. Best of luck in the playoff, and I look forward to seeing you next week in New York City.
Hey, thank y'all for everything, guys. Y'all been great all season. Go Tigers.
There he is.
That to me, I mean,
and he will go to New York. He'll go anywhere you want him to go for recruiting. By the way, that energy is always
and it's amazing.
Always there.
We talk about the credit Coach O deserves for kind of some of the moves he made this offseason and bringing in Joe Brady. I think you have to give offensive coordinator Steve Ensminger a lot of credit as well. He's been really unselfish. This past offseason, Coach O goes into his office and says, "I'm going to bring in a 30-year-old." From the NFL, we got to start implementing these modified West Coast offense principles and some RPOs, put it in. And Ensminger never looked at it, well, this is my offense. It became our offense. There's been a great synthesis with the play calling between Ensminger and Brady. And there's reports that Ensminger does first and second down, Brady does third and red zone, or Ensminger gets 90% and Brady gets 10%. Whatever it is, when you watch them play over the course of 60 minutes, there's no disconnect. There's a rhythm, there's a cadence, but I think the unselfishness by Steve Ensminger, who's been a lifer at LSU, player and coach, I think is truly phenomenal and a big reason why this offense has had the success they've had.
You know, one of the interesting things about Steve is if you think back and get to be old like I am, you think back to the early 90s, one of the hot names in terms of offensive coordinators and innovative guys, Steve Ensminger. And, you know, now he was smart enough to realize the time had come to change a little bit, and they've really let Brady take the wheel there.
And how about all the pieces that fell into place, too? I mean, like you have to go out a lot of times and recruit receivers, and you have to go out and recruit a back that can catch the ball in the backfield if you really want to use them. Well, they got all that. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been one of the best stories in college football, too. You watch him catch the ball against a linebacker and jump cut, no chance. I mean, safeties don't have a chance. So you got Burrow that you recruited. You got all these weapons that you've been recruiting for years, and it all falls into place, and everybody together offensively just completely changes the program.
And that's the other part of it. We give the offensive coordinator a lot of credit, but the jump that Joe Burrow has made from last season to this season, I don't know that I've seen a quarterback do it as well as he's done it. And it's not when you look at him, the arm doesn't blow you off the screen. It's not like he's the fastest guy in the world, but his anticipation and his location of football, which is what matters to Yak. I always say this, Kirk, throw me the ball in a place where I'm running a slant. You put it right here, I can work with it and make a play out of it. Joe Burrow does that as well as anyone I've seen play the game. And so when you look at this offense, with an outstanding running back, with all the weapons outside, Jefferson and chasing these guys, and in the way Joe Burrow is playing, you win with horses in football. And they have as good of horses as anybody in the country. But on the other side of it, defensively, I think in these last couple of weeks, what they've done defensively is why this committee felt comfortable in moving them back into the number one spot, because they've been terrific on offense all season long, but the defense has looked a little different in the past couple of weeks.
Well, I think a little bit of a misconception there, because they don't have the typical LSU defense that we would expect from them playing in the SEC. They're big and physical with the defensive line. They don't pressure the quarterback necessarily that well, but I think they're finally healthy on the back end. Towards the second half of the season, the Tigers' secondary was not depleted, but banged up. Grant Delpit could be a top 5 pick. He's finally back at 100%. And Dave Aranda is one of the top defensive coordinators in the country, and he's coming up with unique ways on how to attack. That will be a good matchup. That LSU defense going up against Jalen Hurts and the OU offense, because they obviously have a great deal of production, but OU does it differently. I mean, he's running the ball. The quarterback's running the ball, and LSU that could be their strength, defending the run.
Yeah, that'll be interesting, too, because Jalen's familiar with Dave Aranda's defense from his time at Alabama, so he's going to know at least a little bit schematically of what he's looking at for sure.
Except for he's driving a totally different animal.
Yes, he is.
And OU, by the way, offensive line has taken some injuries and been banged up, and they're a totally different team. That Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield show that entered the playoffs and all y'all thought about, that's not what you're watching anymore. Lincoln Riley's still one of the best, but this is a different. They're piecing it together a little differently.
LSU and Oklahoma in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl on December 28th. That is one semifinal. The other will be in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl, also on the 28th. It'll be Clemson, the reigning national champion, taking on Ohio State. Trevor Lawrence coming off that virtuoso performance in the title game against Alabama last year, the preseason Heisman favorite. This is the game that everybody kept pointing to, much to Clemson's aggravation, the 1-point victory over North Carolina. 8 wins, last 8 games by 42 points. Here's what Dabo told his team a little while ago.
Well, it's the first time since 1966 that a team started the season number 1, went undefeated through the regular season, and finished 3rd. Okay, so that's history. First time that's happened. All right, number 1, so congratulations on that.
Dabo Swinney joins us now. Still believing? I think everybody's a believer, Dabo, right now. Tell me how it is that when you've won 28 in a row, that you can get your team motivated by a perceived disrespect card.
y'all make it easy for me. These guys live in this world, so you know, we're just excited to be in it. We're glad to have an opportunity to go back out to Arizona and play a great opponent in Ohio State, man. What an unbelievable season they've had. And congratulations to LSU and Oklahoma as well. But, you know, we're just glad to be in it. And credit goes to these players. They've worked their butts off all year long. Our staff has been amazing. Tremendous leadership and focus. And, you know, it's not easy to win, especially to win, you know, as many games in a row as these guys have won. And to get to this point, this is what happens when you win the ACC championship. You get a chance to go play for the whole thing, and we're excited about it.
Dabo, a couple of players turn around and giving you bunny ears or something, so you'll want to put them in some extra conditions
Take the
tomorrow
pizza
morning.
away.
Right. Well, I've mentioned this earlier, and I know you love these things accomplishing first. You have an opportunity. Last year, you were the first team to go undefeated and win the national championship in the college football playoff era. Now, for whatever reason, the oddity of being the third seed, that hasn't happened and gone. Why is it that drives you, finding new things, even if they're a little offbeat, new things to do?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, you know, everybody loves a challenge, or at least, you know, we love one here. And you know, I think that it's just you're always looking for little things along the way to free fuel. When you're going across country, man, free fuel's good. It's expensive. Gas costs a lot of money, so when you can get free fuel, it's always good.
And aside from all of that type of thing, Dabo, you had a lot of new players on the defensive front particularly. How would you describe the improvement that your defense has made I know you've played well all year. Defensive efficiency numbers have been even better than last year. I know that. When you watch the tape, how have you improved over the course of the season on that side of the ball?
Well, they've been unbelievable. I mean, we're probably top 5 in the country in turnover margin now, which is the highest turnover margin. I think we're like plus 14 or something like that. That's by far the highest that we've ever been since I've been the head coach. We were like plus 1 or 2 this time last year. You know, these guys have been consistent. I mean, just tremendously consistent in their preparation and their execution. Coach V and our staff's done an amazing job game planning every single week. We see a lot of different things along the way, but, you know, really just more of the same. They really have done it all year long. You know, 13 games, you know, a few plays here or there, but 13 games this defense has been up to the task, and they've done it in a dominant way.
Trevor Lawrence against Justin Fields sort of feels like an old recruiting battle or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, first of all, 2 great young men, obviously from down in Georgia. Definitely 2 unbelievable prospects coming out of high school. So really not surprising at all to see what Justin's done with his opportunity and what Trevor's done with his opportunity. And, you know, it's kind of crazy that you got these two kids right here from Georgia, and we got to go all the way out to Arizona to play the game. But it'll be exciting. You know, I've seen Ohio State a few times. I mean, they're unbelievable. This is definitely, and we've played them a couple times. This is easily the most talented and the most complete Ohio State team that we've played in those previous couple times over the last several years. Unbelievable defense, and then what they've done offensively has been special to watch, led by Justin, and what the combination of their run game and their pass game, and just the threat that he brings, his ability to beat you with his arm and his legs. He's a special player. So it'll be a great matchup. 2 great young men, 2 great quarterbacks that have a great will to win, and should be a heck of a game out there in Arizona.
And Dabo, hang with us. And on that subject, we're also pleased to be joined right now by the head coach of the Buckeyes, Ryan Day. So, Ryan, I know you had hoped to be the #1 seed, but now you have an opportunity to take on Clemson in the semifinal game in the Fiesta Bowl. What was your reaction when you heard the news and saw the matchup?
First off, just have an unbelievable respect for what Dabo's done in that Clemson program, and they're the defending champs. You know, we're just honored to be part of this playoff and excited to have an opportunity to play another game.
When you, Dabo was just talking about Justin Fields, how would you describe the way he has adapted and transformed himself into the leader of your offense?
Yeah, like Coach was talking about, I think it's going to be a great matchup. Trevor is, one of the best quarterbacks in the country and has done it in the biggest stages, and he's done an unbelievable job with his opportunity. And I think proud of the way Justin's come along. This is a guy who came in, this year, never having a collegiate start, and kind of found his way as the season's gone on. I think he's gotten better and played, and some big moments, and he showed how competitively tough he is, and he's become the leader of our offense.
Dabo, when you look at Ryan's team, and Ryan's sitting right here with you, what would be the best compliment you could give Ryan's team as you get ready to butter them up before you guys square off in 3 weeks?
Hey, listen, I have a great and deep appreciation for how hard it is to do what they've just done. It's incredible to go undefeated, to win your championship game. You know that you're going to get everybody's best. You play Ohio State, you're going to get everybody's best. The whole country's always going to watch. And what that team has done and what Coach Day has done, it's special. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's a special and incredibly difficult thing to achieve. So, I just have an appreciation for what they've done and what it's taken for them to get to this point. Same with our team, and great respect for who they are and the way they've done things, and all those players. We know a lot of them. We recruit a lot of the same guys and do it the right way. So a lot of respect for the Buckeyes, a lot of respect for Coach Day, and for him to do this in his first year. It's incredible. So look forward to a great matchup out there, and I know both teams will have a great will to win.
We'll look forward to that. Dabo, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it. Best of luck. Look forward to seeing you out at the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. Ryan, we appreciate you sticking around with us for a couple of more minutes. How will you address this with your team? Was there any obviously you're excited about the opportunity to play Clemson. What was the level of disappointment of slipping out of the #1 overall seed?
Yeah, we didn't talk about it all that much. We knew if we had to go win the whole thing, we're going to have to play, everybody, play the best. And so whether it was LSU, Clemson, or Oklahoma, you got to be able to play the best to go win the national championship. So we didn't talk a whole bunch about that. We just talked about finishing off this first race, which was the Big Ten championship. And then, now we have our new challenge ahead of us. And so we already talked about that after the announcement was made. And so now we have all our eyes on Phoenix.
You're the first program ever to win 3 straight outright Big Ten titles. Last 2 years didn't make it into the playoff. How would you describe the level of vindication that's felt in the program for getting into the playoff this time?
Well, it's something we talked about all season. We looked at the schedule, and each individual game we felt like we had a really good chance to win. But when you add up all those games and you look at all those games, it's like what Clemson has to deal with. You're getting everybody's best shot week in and week out, and it's not easy. You got to bring it every week. And so all we did is we took it 1 week at a time, and we knew all it took is one game, and we could get thrown out. And so I thought our ability this year to focus, and also our older guys who've been left out the last couple of years, they felt that extra edge to make sure we were in this year.
Hey, Ryan, one thing is, as a first-time head coach, you have experience with Urban Meyer, but I know routine for all coaches is big. How will you come up with your routine to try to get ready for your game now, where you've got some time to catch up and rest up to get ready for the 28th?
Yeah, so, just talked about that now with the team. We're going to let these guys take their finals and rest up a little bit this week. We'll practice this weekend and then kind of get into a game week, leading up to our trip out there, and then give the guys a couple days off, and then we'll meet them out there on Sunday. Once we get out to Arizona, then we'll have a normal game week as we prepare for our game on the 28th.
And Ryan, as you look at your team and this challenge that's in front of them right now, most of your guys, in uncharted waters, what will you do to make sure you're right at the right emotional pitch come the 28th?
Well, I think, you're in a battle every day to make sure you're maximizing each day. And a lot of it has to do physically, a lot of it has to do emotionally, and a lot of it has to do mentally. And, we're going up against a great opponent. I think offensively and defensively what Clemson's done over the past few years is incredible. They certainly have a great talent, but they're very, very well coached. So we're going to have to, like you said, have a lot of energy and hit a peak when we have that game on Saturday. But But more importantly, we got to be ready to execute at a high level because the margin for error will be tiny. So we got to be really on our game as coaches and as players as we prepare.
I think that's going to be something that could be said on both sides. This is a tremendous showdown in the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. Ryan, congratulations on the Big Ten championship and also making it into the college football playoff in your first year. Appreciate your time.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, Ryan Day, the head coach of the Buckeyes. You know, only Larry Coker and Walter Camp gotten off to better starts in their coaching careers than Ryan Day has. When you go back to the 3-0 start when he took over for Urban Meyer for 3 games last year.
He can keep it going, too, though.
Good. He's got a great time.
He can match those guys still.
I would say how he's done it as well. This team has been locked in every week. They've been challenged these last 3 weeks, answered the call. But it's hard to take over. Larry Coker took over for Butch Davis. Butch Davis wasn't as established as Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was 7-0 against Michigan. I mean, he's an icon, winning national championships. And you step into that shadow, he stops by the facility, still has an office there, and he has made this his team. And you look at Ohio State, you look at that symbol of Ohio State, and you think of Ryan Day now. That's a hard thing to do.
That is.
And it's the way I think his team represents themselves. And I'll tell you, I can't wait to watch that defense, probably the most improved area on their team, go up against Trevor Lawrence.
That's the thing for me.
And
He
it's
had to change
too.
that.
Yes.
That's what, because you can talk about the coach before him, whatever you want established.
Right.
It was a bad defense.
Yeah.
It was horrific to watch. It was undisciplined. It wasn't
Well,
structured.
that's what's kept him out the last 2 years.
Exactly. He's done a great job
Now
of
it's a
addressing
strength. Now it's
the
a
right
strength.
people, bringing in the right people, the right system. He was calling plays a year ago, and he was doing it at a high level.
There's a different attitude. There's a
crazy.
different attitude on the defensive side. When you're around this team, you're there in the spring, through the summer, and then to the fall, the attitude is different. And where Justin Fields has come, from transferring to Ohio State and watching him play in the spring and seeing an athletic quarterback who is now an athlete that can also throw the football. The distance that Justin Fields has come with this team, not just on the field, but becoming a leader also, give Ryan Day a lot of credit for that. The attitude of the entire team. J.K. Dobbins has been different. Every time I talk to him in the summer, in the spring, and the fall,
locked in.
He's a different guy, locked in every single day. This team knew they were going to this place, and you could see it building. You could just see the confidence in this team in being different. And to bring a defense from where they were last year to now, to take Justin Fields to where he was in the spring when he got there, to now and this team, it's been an incredible focus.
It has to do with hires, though, too. And Ryan Day deserves a lot of credit for that, right? You bring in Jeff Hafley, and you bring in Greg Madison and Al Washington to coach your linebackers. The linebacker position a year ago was bad. They gave up a lot of explosive plays. That's now been eliminated. So how about this matchup, as you mentioned? That defense against Trevor Lawrence. You knew Trevor Lawrence was going to be scrutinized this year based on the success he had a season ago, threw 8 picks in his first 7 games. Well, he's on fire right now. His last 6 games, 20 TDs, no picks, not making bad decisions against that pass rush and Chase Young, against 2 early round picks and Okudah and Arnett outside. Trevor Lawrence is going to have to be under duress, throwing the football into small windows. He can prove whether or not he's potentially the first pick of the 2021 NFL draft.
The easy thing is going to be for people with this build-up is look at Fields and Lawrence. But Travis Etienne and J.K. Dobbins, I think you're talking about the two of the top backs, if not the top 2 in the entire country. And both of them have to get going to get the quarterback to start to kind of get into that rhythm.
You know, Etienne might be the least heralded superstar in the last 10, 12 years.
Absolutely.
I mean, he is
what is he, 8, 9 yards
good.
of carry?
Yeah, I know.
It's insane.
You know, 2-time ACC Offensive Player of the Year.
Run for more touchdowns than anybody in ACC history.
Part of that is a product that they have so overwhelmed the rest of the ACC that he hadn't had that stage. Need a stage? Got a stage. Got it. In prime time, by the way, 8 o'clock Eastern time, Saturday night, the 28th on ESPN, Ohio State and Clemson, LSU and Oklahoma will get it started from the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. Pleased to be joined now by the chairman of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, Rob Mullins. Rob joins us every week on Tuesday night. And if you're looking for the rest of the rankings, a reminder that'll come your way around 3 o'clock Eastern time. Rob, let's start at the top. LSU overtakes Ohio State. Why?
Well, I mean, you got 2 complete teams, obviously. They've both added a conference championship. And when we're comparing schedule strength, you've got LSU 4-0 against teams in the top 13, Ohio State 5-0 against teams in the top 21. It was really close. I mean, we've spent the entire ranking season, the 6 weeks of just, one going above the other, just by a tick. And this week we saw, or the last couple of weeks, we've seen an LSU defense healthy and playing better, continued quality play out of Joe Burrow at the quarterback position. And this week we just felt that LSU deserved that #1 seed going into the playoff.
Okay, Rob, I'm not asking you to give me names, but last week Ohio State was #1 and they had a solid victory too. How many voters on the committee changed their minds? Well, how different was the vote?
I don't get to see the exact vote, but, it was a similar debate that we've had every week. These teams have been extremely close. We've gone round and round each week, and we've shared that with you here on this show. But again, it's just one does something to move just above. One improves in an element to move just above. I think the key elements this week where the last couple of weeks we've seen an LSU defense that's healthy, playing solid, and you add to that an impressive win against a Georgia team that was our #4 team last week, moved LSU that one last time just above Ohio State.
And on the subject of #4, it seemed as if there was really no other choice at #4. Is that the way it was in the room, that Oklahoma was sort of like the last team left standing?
Well, I mean, that conference championship and second win against Baylor moved them into the #4 spot. We did spend some time talking about Oklahoma and Georgia, but in the end, it was a solid Oklahoma selection for the #4 spot.
So Georgia was still in the picture even after the loss to LSU. They were still at least in the debate for a while for the #4 spot. Was that perfunctory, or was it actually a real debate?
Well, when we put them on the board, we want to be thorough. We want to make sure that we consider everything. So we did have Oklahoma and Georgia on the board, and Oklahoma was the #4 team.
During any of the debates, the perception has been, and look, selection is not reflective of performance. Who knows how the teams are going to play once the semifinals come in 3 weeks. The perception right now is, though, that 1 versus 2 was a massive deal because #2 is going to have to play Clemson. How was that addressed in the committee room during the discussions?
That's really not addressed. Our job is to rank the best teams, and as you've seen every week, and we've spent considerable time talking about these teams, and they've been very close. And we've been measuring them at a very detailed level. And when you look at it again, when we're looking at the protocol, they're both conference champions. They both have similar schedule strengths, so we're into a lot of other elements. And those elements are, we're talking about win against a #5 or what was a #4 Georgia team, a win against what was a #8 Wisconsin team. You're evaluating offenses. Again, quality quarterback play, Joe Burrow a difference maker, Chase Young a difference maker. All those things are part of the conversation. And, it's been every week. And again, it's not somebody slipping back. It's somebody just doing something to move up above. And at the end, it was LSU #1.
Just about to cross the top of the hour here, our college football playoff selection show. The top 4 have been revealed. It's LSU #1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, Oklahoma 4. You have the matchups on the screen there. Pleased to be joined by Rob Mullins, who is the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Rob, we haven't seen the rest of the top 25 rankings yet, but you've alluded to victories over ranked teams. When differentiating very narrow margins between the top 2, between LSU and Ohio State, what emphasis is placed on that as opposed to some of the other metrics, whether it be strength of record, whether it be a SAGR and an FPI, a forward-looking measure? How would you describe just victories over teams that you guys wind up having ranked as opposed to some of the other mathematical-based, more objective measures?
Yeah, we're looking at full resumes. And when we're looking at those full resumes, obviously where teams are ranked pops off the screen at us. And that's why I mentioned schedule strength is a piece of that. And we know that LSU had 4 wins against teams that'll be in the top 13. Ohio State had 5 that'll be in the top 21. So we're comparing those very closely. It's an important element.
Okay, just out of curiosity, there is a component for the committee if they believe a team to be unequivocally better. Did Clemson get any support in the room to be #1 just because, while they might not have the strength of schedule or the quality wins, that anyone in the room felt they were just unequivocally better than everybody else?
No, Clemson's been a part of this discussion. They've had a great year, undefeated, conference champions, and they've been dominant. I mean, when you look what they've done the last 8 weeks, extremely impressive. But we never got to the unequivocal question, so that's why they were #3.
Rob, we'll talk to you a little bit later on. As I mentioned earlier, we'll have the full top 25 rankings that your committee has put together somewhere around 3 o'clock. We'll react to that, the rest of the New Year's Six Bowl. We appreciate your work and appreciate your time.
Thanks, Reese.
All right, Rob Mullins, who is the chair of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, also the athletic director at the University of Oregon. And, you know, I looked at the recusals, and we mentioned it earlier. You looked at the top of that board, and with Oklahoma being in that first group of 6. If you're not familiar with how they rank, put 6 teams on the board based on just who got the most votes. They don't have to be in order, just the most votes. From there, they rank them. So Oklahoma would have been in that mix, which would have meant that Joe Castiglione and Frank Beamer would have to recuse themselves from the discussion. So you probably had 11 members in the room ranking at the top there, and it came out that way. Kirk, what's your reaction to what you heard Rob say? Anything stick out?
I guess the big thing that stuck out is we've been speculating about why LSU flipped and went to 1, and he shed some light right there on it. I think the fact, you can agree or disagree, fact that they beat number 4 convincingly and walked away from them in that second half, I think in that room resonated. And because you're talking about Ohio State and LSU being so close, I think that's what gave them the feel to put LSU over Ohio State.
You know, I think he might have slipped, and we'll have to see the rankings to make sure. I think he indicated that Georgia's still going to be sitting there at number 5. I'm not saying that for certain, but the indication seemed to be there.
Well,
right?
and he also mentioned LSU's defensive improvement. Last 3 games, we talk about Ole Miss a lot, rightfully so. Last 3 games, they're giving up 2 yards a carry. They're getting the quarterback. They're sacking the quarterback a lot, over 15 times. Completion percentage is like 42%. So you've seen what we've seen from LSU in the past. We've seen dominant defense, and so you have to account for those last 3 weeks that LSU kind of
how you're
turned that
trending
defense around.
clearly matters, for the committee.
Well, that's the thing to me is, and I think LSU should be 1. And I give Ryan Day credit because when you interviewed him, he was thankful to be in. He was very stoic. I would be very frustrated if I were Ohio State because just that. I feel like you haven't evaluated all 13 games. You look at them, they've beaten 5 teams currently in the top 20. They've won all their games by 36 points per game, best in the nation. They've been the most dominant team offense and defense week to week. They've got guys on both sides of the ball that might go to New York City for the Heisman Trophy, but LSU's the team the committee feels is peaking at this point heading into the playoff, and I think that's what gave LSU the edge.
So you agree
Great
with
news,
made a case
great
for
news is
Ryan.
all this
I think
debate.
it should be LSU still, but I'd be upset
it's
if I
still
was
not
Ohio State.
subjective because we get to play it out. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. They're all still in. So if you're upset, pissed off, go play, go win, and go win a championship.
Here's
One team has an easier road than another.
Can we
That's the
please point out that he used perfunctory or whatever that word was? Okay, because that was a.
We could get Bear to Google. We can Bear Google.
Yeah, I mean, because that was a word you just kind of snuck in there, and I don't know if Jeff Long knew it.
You called him a
not
name.
Jeff Long.
I mean, sorry.
Jeff Long.
That's $1.
Wow. That's a fine. My
Jeff
bad.
Long has to know a lot of words. He has Les Miles as his head coach. At
Yes,
Kansas.
he does.
There are a lot of new
You
words.
make
that
up
come
plenty of words from the
when
dictionary.
When you're Les Miles' boss. Hey, Chris Fowler is back now. He knows big words too. Chris, you got any big words to describe what you heard from Rob Mullins or anything that stuck out?
Well, I'll tell you what stuck out, and you picked up on it, is Georgia. Because if you go on the phone here and you talk about social media and you use LSU's big win over Georgia as justification for the jump back to number 1, people just come down hard on Georgia. They can't believe they were ranked 4 going in, revisionist history. I get that, but it's going to be if the committee continues to rank Georgia as highly, that's going to be controversial. Other stuff I'm looking forward to seeing when the rankings unfold, Reese, who's going to be ranked higher, Wisconsin or Penn State? Who's going to face Oregon out in the Rose Bowl? And that's going to be an intriguing debate, I'm sure. Wisconsin, do they get penalized for winning the division and playing Ohio State twice, even though they got pulled away from big time in the second half? They hung tough for a while. Penn State kind of hung tough in Columbus. Interesting debate, but they're cranking up the music at the bar that sits beneath the studio. So Miami Beach is in full weekend mode. So I just want you to know that.
And somebody, Fowler, are you in flip-flops? Right now,
I am not in flip-flops. I have adult pants on down here, I promise you.
All right, Chris, look forward to seeing you out in Arizona, too. Chris Fowler joining us. I appreciate your time, bud.
You bet, Reese. Take care.
I thought he was staying till 4. He's not staying.
Are you kidding? Did you not just hear the man? He said the music is playing. You're a Clevelander.
He's got a Mai Tai waiting for him downstairs.
That was his hint, right? You know, he was like, okay, 4, we know, let's go here. Right?
Tick. Happy hour.
Joe, you got serious football in your face. What's going on?
Not serious, Reese. At this point, just looking forward to the playoff. When you look at this LSU team, I did think it was interesting, when you talk about being complete and what they've done defensively in the past couple weeks. When you looked at them mid-season, this LSU defense had trouble lining up. Plays were starting and they weren't in position yet. In the past couple weeks, they've been different in lining up. And I think they've ran a terrific defensive coordinator. When you watch this LSU team play during the season on defense, they look like 11 guys are down at the playground playing defense. They were just running around and guys, hey, you go over there, I got this guy. In the past couple weeks, and what they've been able to do, not just the numbers, not just holding Georgia to 61 yards rushing, not just holding Texas A&M to 7 points, but they've been different in their ability to line up and play team defense. And if the committee is sitting down watching these games together, like they're supposed to do this weekend, and you looked at LSU's defense, and you just get away from numbers, just watch the way they play, they're different.
They ain't lacking talent either.
They're different. No, they're talented.
Yeah,
and now, in the past weeks, they've played some team defense where guys are actually lined up when the ball is snapped. They're different on defense.
And the committee considers injuries, and I think that was one of the real big issues for LSU in the first half of the year. They're giving up 38 to Texas, 38 to Vandy, and 6-14 to Ole Miss, and 41 to Bama. They had guys hurt in the front. Grant Delpit got injured later. These last couple games, they've been healthy across the board, and they're getting pressure on third down. The pass rush, to me, was one of their big issues. Chase on third down. They've done a good job stopping the run outside of Ole Miss most of the year. But now getting on third down these last 2 weeks, Chase on number 18, he's really played his best football. He's made them a better defense.
I'm really big on that whole emotional thing. I don't kill LSU for the Ole Miss thing. It was a week after Alabama. They got past that. They got the job done.
I'm telling you right now, it's been a real challenge down there. As we've marveled about Joe Burrow and this offense, this is an LSU team that's always won with defense. And now, all of a sudden, Joe Burrow's scoring in 2 minutes. They know Joe Burrow's going to score 40. We're good. I think it affected their mindset. I think they lost their edge until Dave Aranda kind of got them together. They got healthy, and they started to realize after they got embarrassed. And I think the committee moving Ohio State to 1. Why? Ohio State's a more complete team. In other words, LSU's defense isn't any good. I think that got their attention. So I think it's as much between their ears because they knew they could rely on that new offense, their new toy. And I think they're a different team because it's a better buy-in right now by LSU.
We're bragging on LSU's defense, and I agree they've turned it around a little bit. Is it fair to say, if you're the big three up there, is it fair to say that their defense is the weakest?
Yes.
Of those three? Yeah,
I think so.
I just want to make sure.
They're still real.
I wouldn't even say that. I think again we're splitting hairs when we say that. And I say complete body of work. I would say yes, but I would say in the past couple of weeks, this is a Texas A&M team. They held to 7. Texas A&M scored more points against Georgia, more points against Clemson, more points against Alabama, and so I don't take that and say, hey, that's just average. They've been good on defense these past 2 weeks. I wouldn't just jump and say they're not.
I wonder out there how many people, are impressed by LSU's defensive performance against that Georgia offense. That was down Lawrence Cadron. DeAndre Swift had like 3 carries in the game, and Blaylock gets hurt. Pickens doesn't play in the first half. Yeah, I'm not disagreeing. LSU's defense has improved, and
overall.
Texas A&M was good.
Throw A&M in there, though.
But I am a little surprised the committee, I think, gave them that much credit for beating number 4 Georgia, considering the injuries in the suspension.
I think that's a very fair point. Semifinals are set. It's going to be LSU against Oklahoma, Clemson against Ohio State. When we come back, college football playoff selection show. The Bear, Chris Felica, has the lines on those games. I'm sure Vegas has consulted with Joey Galloway because he does nothing but pick winners.
LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma. Welcome to the College Football Playoff.